passion to fly, but I may not be having the natural abilities or skills for that. So somewhere you have to also introspect to know what you are good at, and as because each person's life creates you in a way where you have certain unique skill or unique ability that you can share and bring about to people around you. So that was the second part of it. For me, that was the ability to share my knowledge, whatever I know or what I've learned with others in a way where I can communicate it, where I can transfer that knowledge in a very understandable way for the other person. So somewhere, while once I had these two piece of clarities, it was luckily because of my family support and background. I did not have to think much. I was able to quit my job, and I just decided to move back to India and start the farming venture. Of course, the journey, I might make it sound very easy. The first, I would say, almost 10 years now, that I've been doing this for 12 years, and the first 10 years have been very, very difficult. It's still challenging and very difficult, but it's much more fun now because now things are slightly sort of going as I would want them to. But the first few ventures I did, the first farm I worked on a second farm, I worked on a third farm. All those 2 3 farms, I either lost money or I did not make any money, but I learned a lot of lessons. So I think uh, that uh,
Yeah.
go ahead, ask your next question.
Yes. So, Kapil, why farming out of everything else?
So like I said earlier, farming was not something that I had on mind at all, but
Hmm.
it was pretty much because food and health is what my passion is about.
Hmm.
And farming sort of was just somebody suggested that, nowadays farming is broken, there's lots of chemicals being used, a lot of our diseases today are related to the chemicals in our food and the way our food is grown. I had never envisioned when I even started farming that I'll be doing urban farming per se, or I'll be having edible roots someday. I had never envisioned all that. It was somewhere a leap of faith that I'll start doing something, and then the path will unfold. So that's essentially what has happened today. I feel very much I'm doing what I had vaguely vaguely sort of imagined 12 years ago. So I'm in a way I'm getting closer and closer to what I wanted to do, but it has taken this journey of 2 years to get there.
So, would I be right if I say a little bit that rather than you choosing urban farming or farming, it found you in a way, like, it.
Absolutely, I totally think so. Yes, yes, absolutely. I think it. See, I think this is also what I believe, that once you set an intention out there about where you want to go in life, then I think things start moving. I mean, there are miracles happening every day. There are coincidences happening every day with me since I took this journey, since I took this step. The first step I took, and then the rest of the things start flowing to me. So, like Ravi calling me to Delhi to do a workshop. I mean, I just came for one odd workshop. I didn't think that I'll come to
Yeah.
Delhi ever. Delhi was the last place on my list to ever live there.
Yeah.
So it I think it just happens.
Yeah. So I think that also partly answers my next question, because you mentioned there were so many challenges. You said first three farms, you said you were either losing money and there were so much challenges on your way. So you already mentioned that you got at least support from your family. They were not saying, "Oh, Kapil, what are you doing?" But and Ravi was a support. Were there any other support or emotional support where which kept you going through these times when you said there were so
ये
many
लड़की सही है.
Yes, of course. I think, I mean, I can't even name everyone, but Ravi, of course, and then Manish. Manish, I met the first year itself through Ravi. Of course, I met Manish when I came to Delhi, and a lot of it just have. I mean, I think Ravi was instrumental. I think in terms of where we are today as Edible Roots, because he helped me establish those initial contacts and network in Delhi, which I would have never been able to do by myself. So I think he was very instrumental in that way. But in terms of acquiring my knowledge and everything, I've learned from one of the things I learned again in my life is that there's a quicker way to mastery if you want to learn something. And if so farming was a completely new topic for me. I had no educational or formal background around
yeah.
it. uh, so that's why the one thing that I sort of have learned is that to master something, there are two ways. One is that I can keep reading about it, keep learning about it, keep making mistakes and learn it. And that's also one way to learn. But there's a way to really fasten that process. And that process I call is modeling. To find somebody who has already done and is doing what I want to do, and then just start modeling that person.
Okay.
So I started. So if I want to improve a specific area of my business or a skill of mine, like public speaking or just talking, then I just find people around me who have figured it out, who are already doing it, and then I just spend time with them. So farming was one of the primary skills I had to learn, and the way I learned it, I for the first 2 years I made blunders and I lost a lot of money, and then I figured out, okay, this is not going right. Because the learning curve is so long in farming. I make a mistake this year, I have the next year summer to correct it. It takes a year to
Yeah.
correct the mistake. So I found the best farmer. He was not an organic farmer, but I found the best farmer in the village where our farm was. And every day I spent 2 hours with him, walking his land, talking to him. He didn't know that I'm doing this for learning from him. He
Mm-hmm.
was learning some things from me in terms of how to modernize farming, how to do it more efficiently, how to think. So it was and he was almost my father's age. He was like a friend to me. So I spent about 2 years daily just spending time with him, modeling him.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the ways I sort of learned it. So there are many of them. I traveled all around the country, meeting the best organic farmers, spending time with them. I mean, that's the way to learn. You have to put in. But once you are doing what you're passionate about, all this does not seem like effort or even hard work. It just flows.
Mm. Yeah. All right. So I think I don't even need to ask my next question because one conversation just flows into the another, and that was the next question. I was saying that if for the people here also, like for example, you had some kind of at least support which that you could lose some money, but even like you said, learning shadowing someone is one of the good ways to learn. Would you recommend few more ways like apprenticeship or anything other which suppose a 18-year-old or a 20-year-old or even older someone who's looking for a transition like you yourself saying he can do to learn and get confident and maybe to fail less, so they can shadow someone is one. If there is anything else that you feel you would like to share with the audience of a way to do that, yeah, I would ask.
See, I think the other sort of learning I had was that if you let's say, so farming was a completely new space for me. So if I wanted to become a master in farming, the general sort of principle is that if you spend about 3 hours a day for 3 years learning about something, then at the end of 3 years you'll probably be better than 99% of the people out there who are doing the same thing.
Mhm.
So that's so if you want to become a musician, you start playing music 3 hours every day for 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years you'll be better than 99% people out there. So I think that's the other thing. You have to commit to learning about it. You have to constantly work on improving yourself. You can't think that I have learned enough. So 3 years you get to a point where you're good, but then the journey of mastery continues. Even after 12 years, I spend a lot of time learning. Learning is my daily process. So I think that's also an inherent part of it. So besides modeling, you have to commit to learning for yourself
Hmm.
for whatever area you want to improve on.
Yeah. Can I do it 9 hours for 1 year? Like 9 hours every day for 1 year?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, you could. Yeah, but certain things I think take time because experience is sometimes has a sense of time to it. Certain things take time for you to process, but I'm sure it will fasten the journey. Yeah,
Mhm.
if you want to do that.
So, if you would like to share one or two most major learnings, whether around urban farming or around life, like you said, you're constantly learning. So, whatever two, three major learnings, if you would like to share that these are very important things, what would those be?
Learnings in what domain of life?
Learning in a particular livelihood one, and also learning on the journey anything about the work we do, like a broader learning also, that this is like you already said that if you do 3 hours for 3 years, these kind of, is there more tricks you would like to say around things that you got to know, the original thinking which we sometimes just get suddenly while we are on that journey, like some realization that happened for you that this works, this makes sense.
Um, I think one other thing that I've learned, and I think this is something very important I want to share, is see today I feel that what Edible Roots is doing and where we are is sort of in a good, safe, stable space. We've reached a point where we are doing, so to say, good. People would mostly think of it as good, but I know, having gone through this journey, even until 6 months ago, even during the COVID times, I did not know whether this business will survive this or not. So in April of this year, I was not so sure. So one thing that I have learned is that you have to know that there's a certain element of chance and luck to things. Okay, so you cannot just say that you don't know something, or you are not qualified enough, or there's something limiting about yourself. That's not making something successful. By the time I had finished my 3 farms that, so to say, were not successful, I had pretty much lost hope that there's something wrong with me. I don't know how to figure this out. I should maybe change my profession. So in some sense, Edible Roots was my last bet. That if this works out, works out. Else I'll find a job and I'll go back to what I was doing. Although I don't think I would have ever gone there, because that wouldn't have fulfilled me again.
Hmm.
But having said that, the main learning here is
Yeah.
that in whatever you do, there can be n number of reasons why something does not work out. And it may not, and none of those reasons might be because of you. It could be something completely external.
Yeah.
It could be the time, it could be the season, it could be the people around you, whatever it could be. So one thing is that you have to keep going. You have to keep learning from each one, and so I could potentially see my first 3 ventures or the farms as failures. Invariably, what I learned from my job, invariably what I learned from my college, in making those finer learnings and distinctions, what's making this Edible Roots, so to say, work at this time. So,
Hmm.
so you just have to keep going. You have to just keep following your path, and the learnings will happen, and you will eventually get there. There is no such thing as a failure. You have to commit to your path. I think that's what it is.
All right.
and
All
and
right.
don't worry about success or failure. Both are equally good results.
Mm-hmm.
Failing is as good as successful, because sometimes feel that, oh, so today you guys might see me and feel, oh, he's doing so well, but had you seen me 3 years ago, I would have seemed like a failure. So the same person has not changed, right? I mean, I have not changed, right? I'm the same person still. So it's just that you're seeing me in different times, and neither of the times was better than the other. It's just part
Mm-hmm.
of the journey.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. Okay. So I think that's beautiful. And like you said, that if you 3 years back it looked like failing and now it looks good. So do you like also one question, the youth which I have felt lives in a lot of fear around is, and which is developed, is that if you leave your job suddenly, like if you leave like immediately after grade 12, you go to college, you take a gap year and you will lose something really big. If you don't take a job immediately after your college, you're wasting your year and maybe you will not get a job again. And after a job or left a job doing nothing for another year, you might not get. So when there was a phase when you said that, I said, if this doesn't work as edible root doesn't work, urban farming doesn't work, I'll go back to a job. Did you feel that you have come backward in your life, or you felt that doing this urban farming in itself, even if it failed, let's assume, it did still added to your skills to go back better to the world, if by any chance you had to go back to, like, did it close opportunities for you, or did it make you a better
Yeah,
person and more
by all means better. I think that's the reason, because see, and then as I read more about it, we, for all the successful examples of people who have figured out a way to make their living better, the big, we always hear the big names, we don't hear the small names. But but uh, but anybody, if you see the small or the big successful people, they all have had failures in the beginning. I think that the initial, and for somebody it might be one, for somebody it might be five, so for somebody it might be 10. For me, it was 3 or 4. Uh, but the idea is that that is part of the each person's journey. I mean, there is no, that somebody might have hit jackpot by being successful in their first venture, but generally, what I've seen, that everybody goes through this journey. That is essential part of becoming who you are.
Hmm.
To so what I'm saying is that we shouldn't even see it as something negative. See, failure
Mhm.
is a word, but we should not see it as a negative connotation. Both are equally good.
Hmm.
you are something better will come out of it eventually.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is this too shall pass. So this too shall pass. So which means that whether you are succeeding or failing, either both the things are going to pass down.
Yeah.
So don't take your success also to so that you start flying around, or don't take your failures also so seriously that you get bogged down.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I would invite at this point, I'm going to ask another question, but I would also invite all of you to keep writing questions that are coming for you in the chat because we would love to hear them and answer them. And I think my question, another question now, going into a little bit more into the urban farming aspect, moving from journey aspect to is like, what is the model of edible roots? Is it, I'm assuming this is something you do full time, right? This is your main source of even a livelihood. This is where you get your bread and butter. So, like, do you, what kind of a
Yes,
life?
now it is. Now it is.
Okay. So,
Now it is.
what kind of a, like something who is thinking of having a career in urban farming, what can they expect? What kind of a journey they can expect? How does the finances look like? uh, what is it? And yeah, what is the model they should think of, beginning? How could they do something like this?
Okay. So I would slightly first begin to define what I'm doing a bit broadly. So while edible roots I started 5-6 years ago by doing a garden on a rooftop, which is
Hmm.
essentially what urban farming is. Today what we are doing is much broader in definition. We are doing lots of education, not only around growing food, but even around composting, waste management, even how to consume your food, how to make a smoothie, how to grow microgreens, how to grow herbs, how to dry the herbs, how to make a chawanprash, how to make a pickle. So you won't see all those things as part of farming,
Hmm.
but they're all part of essentially living a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. The other things that we're doing is we are also having this whole we're connecting the farmers to consumers now. So what urban farming has done is, or the goal, what it does is it sensitizes the urban consumer to what a farmer has to go through. When you grow one pot of your own, you suddenly realize that what effort, time, and resources it takes to create whatever you're growing, and it takes so much of time. So then you suddenly have a deep appreciation for what the farmer goes through, and because of which all of the audience that we have, all of the clients and the customers that we have, uh, they're now more sensitized towards buying also what they're buying. So there's a conscious buying happening. There's a conscious awareness about what food they're buying, which farmer is growing it where. Because obviously they're not growing everything in their balcony or their rooftop.
Yeah.
So now, the what domain we are working on is much broader than urban farming. So now to answer your question, uh, i- when I started out in urban farming, first of all, I did not think it'll become a business like this. It
Hmm.
was not my plan. But now in hindsight, I would say if you want to begin something like this, uh, the key things that would make it successful, I think, is one is to find ways to make it accessible and affordable for people wherever you live. So when I first started out, of course, there was a certain cost to it. The costs were higher because didn't have scale. So so we had to target only those people who could pay that much money. But over time, we are constantly figuring out ways to make this more accessible, and that's why from 15 gardens in the first year, now we do 1,000 gardens in a year. So I think that the reason those numbers are going higher is, of course, more awareness, but also to try to make it affordable and accessible. And I think besides that, in general, you have to understand that farming is something that takes time to learn. It's not something that you can learn very quickly, because the learning curve is slow. And what I mean by learning curve is slow is, like, if I plant, let's say, a papaya this year, like right now, and if I make some mistakes in that, the papaya has a life cycle of at least 12 months, maybe 24 months. So whatever mistakes I'm making now, I'll probably correct them 12 months down the road. So my even if I wanted to learn something today, I would not learn it. I'll have to go through multiple iterations of it.
Mhm. I think Kapil got stuck. I think think he'll come back. Hey, Kapil, are you back?
No, he's not able to talk. He left
He'll
actually.
join. Yeah, he joined.
I think
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
disconnected.
You disconnected, but yes, you
Am I
were
audible?
finishing.
Am I audible now? Where
Yes,
did you
yes.
guys last hear me?
Yeah.
What did you last hear from me?
You were talking about,
Multiple iterations.
yeah.
So
Papaya.
basically the learning curve is much longer, and that's why for anything in farming you have to give yourself time. The second piece of sort of advice or suggestion that I have is not only for farming but any business, which is to what is called as bootstrapping in any business, any new business you're starting out, is to be very conscious of where you spend your money and your time. It's okay to start small. It's okay. Basically, the idea is to what is called as getting the first sort of deliverable right. So you have to focus on getting that one garden that you're doing right, or the first 5 gardens right, rather than focusing on getting it to 1,000 first. So starting small, keeping your costs very tight, trying to gradually build it up. That's how we did it. And that's one way I think a lot of people do, and there's a technical term for it called bootstrapping. So that's how that those are the mistakes I made in my earlier ventures. Money was available to me, so I spent it, but then it was gone, and there was no way to get it back. So it's very easy to get carried away. Be very conscious of where you spend your time, money, and resources.
Hmm. Okay. Nice. So I think I would now invite one some. There's a question coming in the chat around how do we know how interested the community is in accepting products from alternate practice, given the dominance of commercial products. So, like you're already talking about bootstrapping, trying like getting the products right. So, yeah, like so, would you like to say say a little more on how do we work with a community that actually wanting the product rather than we go and impose that thought on the community of what the general conventional market do. You try to advertise too much and sell your product even if the need be. So what do you think there, that how do we know that they are interested, genuinely interested? And I think I will also add a question with that, that they're genuinely interested and also they are benefiting from it. They are benefiting from it, genuinely benefiting from it.
So I still need to understand your question. I didn't get it very clearly.
Yeah, all right. So I think what is a gauge? How do you gauge that, they're genuinely interested in what we are doing in, for example, if you're selling a Chawanprash, and how do you reach your audience? Who do you reach out to with the Chawanprash as a product?
Okay, so the way we have done it is that now we do a lot of social media marketing and paid advertising, all that, but that is a phenomenon of the last 3-4 months. For the first 5-6 years of our journey, we have never done any paid advertising. So the spreading of word has basically been through word of mouth and through just normal social media that we use. Whatever activities we are doing, whether making a garden or whether making a new product or whether doing a new workshop, we just post it on our Facebook and Instagram and things like that. And through word of mouth over time, I think the exponential effect comes into place. 1% tells 2 to 4, 4 to 8, like that. So over time, more and more people know about what you're doing, and if you're genuinely doing quality work, if you are delivering quality, if you're committed, and if you're honest, if you have high ethics, um, I think this is another learning I forgot to mention, but this is very, very important in today's time. Information travels very fast, but even besides that, I think there's only one way to do business, is to do it ethically. I mean, somewhere, if you're not ethical about things, if you're not honest about things, if you don't make quality and client happiness your primary goal, and money is only as your primary goal, then it will rarely last long term.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I want to talk about in terms of learning is also I'm digressing a bit, but I think this is the important points, is also to think, and this is what I'm thinking about right now in terms of edible roots as well, is how to build an organization uh, that, typically we think in terms of a quarterly plan or an annual plan if it's a business. Something we need to learn from Japanese is, when they think about a business, they're making 50-year plans and 100-year plans. So when you start thinking in that time frame, suddenly your actions today change. So if you're thinking short term, our actions today change. They're different as compared to when you're thinking long term. If you see businesses that have lasted more than 2 centuries around the world, about 70% businesses around the world are from Japan that have lasted more than 200 years. So they have figured out a way to create lasting impact. And this is, I think, very, very important. So you never know where it's going to go. It may or may not succeed, but that intention has to be there to create something where, and of course it'll evolve. We started by just doing a kitchen garden, but today we're doing 4 or 5 different things which are related to what we're doing. So it's not like you're stuck with what you're doing. It's very important to adapt, but it's also important to think about how you some make an organization, make a structure that is long lasting.
Yes.
So to go back to your question about can you repeat that, please?
Honestly, I just got into flow of what you were saying,
Okay.
and I forgot what I initially asked. But I think uh, following,
Remember that word. How do you gauge? You're asking how do you gauge?
yeah,
Uh, uh,
you answered that you see if the product is people are accepting it
Correct,
themselves.
correct. Like through basically it's through what, but it depends on your business. Our business is like that. In your product or service, it might be a different way to do that. And also, I think the angle of question was also about affordability and who can do it and how to find whether. So in our case, again, it happened the first year when we were doing work. Not many people were keen on a kitchen garden, but
Mhm.
suddenly especially lately in the last few months because of COVID, which has of course had its negative sides, but it has mostly been more conscious. A kitchen
Hmm.
garden is completely in touch with your own hands. So this whole idea of infectiousness and all this stuff
Yeah.
is addressed by growing your own food. So for us, somewhere that consciousness that would have taken us awareness that would have taken us many years to create has suddenly happened in a very short period of time. So sometimes things can work out for you, but so I think, but it also depends on what work you are in. But if it's farming and all, I think trust is the most, and it's not just farming. I think in any business, trust with your customer is the most important thing. If you build trust, if you do good work, I think the word will spread. Be patient, things will happen.
Hmm. And how do you build a team? Like, I'm sure this is not a one man's thing. There are more people
Not at all.
associated. So,
Yeah.
what is an organizational values that you hold, and how did you build a team? Do you train them? Do you work with them as a team, or there's an hierarchical? Like, what are the organizational values that you believe in?
See, a lot of people ask me this particular question, and one more question that may or may that you may ask me later on. How, like, what, and maybe you're trying to ask me, like, how did we create this place called Edible Roots? And honestly, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, when I look back, I cannot pinpoint a specific point in time or a specific thing that I did that I could take credit for. I think it was just that we were in the sometimes I feel that we were in the right space at the right time with the right intentions. But having said that, we have been very lucky in terms of people. People approached me with
Okay, I think he'll be back in another 10 seconds. Sorry for the interruption.
Prachi,
Yes.
in the meantime, can you create these questions for him? Like, how do we connect with him? How
Yeah, yeah.
do
We will.
people can learn from our
Absolutely.
internships or something like that?
Yes. May I know who's this? I'm just hearing a voice, not the name.
Prapun.
Okay, Prapun. Thank you. So, Kapil, before you switched, or like you got disconnected, uh,
Huh.
I think what I want to move on very quickly is
Huh.
there's a question coming up in audience from audience, which is saying that how can someone who doesn't owns a house in an urban context
Uh-huh.
can do this if it is possible, or it's a privilege of having a house. And I think adding to that same question, I would also add a question saying, let's say learning aspect. I don't own a house, I don't own a land, and I think you guys already do it. So is there a way that how can someone learn to do it, and also look at from an aspect of a career and not only growing things at your own house, which I felt audience felt that it is also about it's. So I would like to share that this is not only limited to growing food in your own house. This can be a full-time a livelihood where you can help others growing food. And
Correct.
so do you think it's necessary for me to have a piece of land to be able to be an urban farmer? And if not,
Yeah,
then what can I do?
I think practically nobody has land in. I mean, I would say less than 1% of our customers have land. What most people have is either a balcony or a backyard or a rooftop. But also some people are renting or some people don't have space. So again, this is a very small part of our work still, and I'm hoping it'll increase over time. But we are doing like work with bastis now. Bastis is very cramped spaces, where even if they have a space, they may not be getting enough sunlight. So and that or sometimes it's a society where they may not have space to grow, but they might have common spaces to grow, like a park. In fact, one of the first projects I did, this was in the very first year. This was in the village called Zamrudpur, which is in near GK in Delhi. Uh, so I didn't even, this was my first year in Delhi, and I was very new. I didn't even know that a village can exist within a city. So but in Zamrudpur there was this little park. So we just went there. The local people who lived there, they volunteered. They helped me. I gave them the guidance. They created the garden over there, and then they planted food over there. So sometimes I think it's just a matter of being creative. All you need is sunlight and some access to water. Those are the two criteria. So I think from what I understand, the space is abundant around us, really abundant around us. It's just a matter of creatively figuring out, and this is sort of where we are also going. How to create what is called as creative commons, where we can this is happening much more in the western countries, but not so much yet in India. But I like to talk about an example of Cuba. For example, Cuba, the largest city in Cuba is Havana, which is the capital. uh, Havana produces almost, in the city it produces 3.8 million tons of food on an annual basis. So and so in that city they have practically eliminated all gardens, and of course they have some recreational spaces, but they practically eliminated most of them, and it's all used to grow food. Food is growing everywhere around the city, all rooftops, all balconies, all common spaces, any space you get light, they put something there and it starts growing food.
Mhm,
So I think it's just a matter of being creative to figure out the space. Not having space is just a psychological limitation, I feel.
mhm, mhm. And would you recommend few places? And does edible roots, by the way, is into training also? Like if someone wants to learn, can they come to edible roots?
Actually, that's what we are mostly known for. That, I mean, although that's a very small part of our work, but that's because the training element of it gets around. So now with COVID, we are doing a lot of learning through webinars, and we also do live sessions every Sunday, and we also have recordings of them available. There's a small charge for it, but we do have them available. We also do occasionally a lot of free sessions. During the entire COVID period, we did them on a gift economy basis. But now we do a small charge. I also have a course that I do personally, which is a year-long course. It's called a Master Gardener course. So that somebody wants to. This is, I think, one of the first. So what this Master Gardener course does that is that it compresses that knowledge that'll take you to do yourself over over many years. That's the modeling I'm talking about. So currently I have a batch of about 60 people who are part of it, but that's something I intend on doing on a repetitive basis. But so going to the point, if somebody wants to make this as a livelihood, wants to make it, so what, and also what we are realizing, that we can't be everywhere. Edible Roots is primarily based in Delhi. We have a team of about 20-25 people. So now we are getting requests from all parts of the country, because of the COVID, we're doing a lot of webinars. So initially our audience for the workshops was also very limited to Delhi.
Mm-hmm. Internet is not our best friend today.
Hi, Kapil. Can you hear me?
He'll be back in a minute. Just give him a 30 seconds. He's unfortunately in little low connectivity today. That's why. Yes, we have you back.
I think I'm losing network in between. Yeah, I think I'm losing network in between. I'm in very remote parts of hills, so I'm lucky to have this network today. Basically, what was the last thing you guys heard?
About the courses you're doing.
So about the courses I'm doing. So, and what I was saying was that the other thing for us is that now we are primarily based in Delhi. Our team is primarily in Delhi, but we're getting requests because of all these webinars that we have done. Suddenly, our audience is all around the country, even outside the country. So, what we are gradually moving towards is somehow creating this decentralized sort of model where, with some guidance and knowledge and expertise from us, you can start this urban farming sort of work alive as a livelihood within your own cities or your own towns or villages, wherever you might be. And so that is something that we're moving towards. One of the courses that I'm doing, Master Gardener course, which is a year-long course, is sort of the intention is to. So this time we have about 60 people who are doing it. So the intention is to have this 60 more people.
Okay. I think I will complete that. Edible Root is basically offering courses and where you can go and learn. And I think I would also, next question which I am planning to ask is, he already covered the idea of scope of it, like from the example of Cuba. So I think there's an immense scope in this area. So I think for me, the question, let's wait for him. And then I think, is there any other boiling question? I would request it to take a minute. Is there any boiling question coming for anyone who wants to ask? Because we have another 5 minutes with him. So you can just unmute yourself. I'm already reading the questions you're sending. So I'm trying to cover as much. But if there's any boiling question coming, please tell me so that I can quickly ask him.
Can you ask him about any regulation part, and like how do we sell it, or how do we package it when we are growing or experimenting with the urban stuff and other things?
Okay, are there any regulations that one has to take care of? Okay.
Yeah, regulations. And how about the packaging and how the sales can be done? Like within the neighborhood we need to do, or should we create some kind of open house on a particular week? Or what is his ideas like?
All right. We'll go there. Kapil, we left you when you were saying that you are opening another course where there will be 60 people probably.
So the idea behind this course is to create a way for more and more people to choose this as a livelihood and reach and make this offering available to more and more people in their own local towns and cities.
All right. I would also request you if there are any other learning resources from Edible Roots other than Edible Roots which you yourself used to learn, self-learn, for someone who is not maybe to share. If you want, you can take another 2 minutes to share quickly here, and also we can share later.
Specific to urban farming?
Yes.
See, when I started out about 4 or 5 years ago into this, there were not many people in India who were doing this. Now there are a lot of people who are doing it. So I think you can just look around and you'll find lots of resources. Our Facebook and we have a group also, and our websites and YouTube channels are filled with lots of knowledge now. In fact, YouTube in general is filled with, so there's a lot of knowledge available, so to say, in terms of learning. But what is also very important in this case is the practical experience of doing it. So I think somewhere you have to also immerse yourself. So lot of people who want to learn with us, we have our own farms around Delhi, so they come and volunteer, spend time there, participate in this farmlets program, which is they take a plot on subscription basis and then they start growing on it for themselves. But then through the journey of growing it for themselves, they also learn the process of it, and then they can, and then some of our clients who have been doing it for the last 4 5 years, and so now they're pretty much experts, so they are already helping people within their communities.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I think, but while there's a lot of information available online, I think the Indian resources are still far and few, because in India this is still a new thing. uh, Bangalore and Delhi are sort of at the forefront, and then there are a few other cities like Hyderabad and Delhi, Bombay, and all that are doing it. A lot of knowledge is available from abroad, but you have to find the Indian context for it. You cannot apply everything that you learn from abroad as it is. So
Mhm.
if you read something that's from another country, you have to understand the context of it and see if it's still applicable to our Indian context.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. All right. I think in interest of time, we are 6:45. It's almost time to close. But is it okay if I take one more question, because I think one question is coming?
I
Uh,
have some time. I can go over if everybody else is willing, and if you are willing.
all right. So
Yeah.
I think, Kritika, why don't you ask your question rather than me asking? Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi. So I was actually asking what is the scope for doing farming on patches of land that are left open, unused? You know, these dump sites or small patches of land where people just throw garbage and can be converted into green patch or even growing some edible stuff. Because I've seen couple of videos of people doing that, and that quite interests me. And I feel, I mean, there should not be legal problems, of course, but why not convert a patch of land that is dry or filled with garbage into an edible space?
Um, See, the what is there's a huge history around this. What is called as the tragedy of the commons. So what you're talking about are the areas that sort of belong to not any one person, and with the politics and the social dynamics that exist in our country today, this is a very very challenging area. Even where even a park within a society which is completely under the control of that society's governance, that colony's governance, even there the 100 households that live can't come to a consensus of what they want to do. So coming to a consensus on a public space is even far-fetched, in at least in Indian context. So this has been our endeavor since day one, that we do more and more. We have done a handful of them, but I think unless you have some political influence, I think these are, because everybody has their vested interests, and this is,
Like there would be a lot of legal challenges. What you are
I think,
telling.
more than legal, it's more, I think, socio-political. Legal is not so difficult, I think. I mean, if the land is idle, you can grow anything on it, because see, farming, the one thing about farming is, especially growing vegetables and things like that, is that there's nothing permanent about it. If you're not planting trees, it's okay, because that land can be utilized for anything else in the future. So I think legally honest, and there's no sense of damage that you're causing also in terms of growing food, and if you're doing it organically, not putting any chemicals onto it, then I don't see why. So there's hardly any legal implications. It's mostly, I think, socio-political, that is applicable, I think.
But legally, any tips you could give if someone wants to do something like this?
Legally, in what sense?
I mean, like, how do you know if this place belongs to someone, or, you know, I mean, be sure that no one comes and claims tomorrow that this is our land, because right now they're dumping stuff in that. But they,
That's a
I
hard
think you have
one.
to find locally. I think I think you have to start growing there, and trust me, you will come to know who has control over it.
They'll come to pluck the vegetables once
Yeah,
they are
yeah.
done.
They'll come to pluck, or they'll come the next day to stop you. That who gave you permission to do this? So see, in India, this is also there. No, we poke nose everywhere. We poke fingers everywhere, even if it's not our business.
Yeah.
So I think you have to. This is a very local thing, very very local thing. you have to work in your local context, understand and having some connections, some influence, some power does help out.
Mhm. So, okay, so this also brings me this question that you already saying edible roots can't be everywhere. So you're already training people. And there's also a question coming up from the audience which says, do you think urban farming can feed the world? So I think mixing these two questions, I would ask firstly, yes, do you think urban farming can feed the world? But also, if the answer is yes, what is the scope? What is the work you see lies ahead of us that can actually make that possible? Like, what do
Ma-
we
ma-
need?
Usually, my answer is a question in return. Why does it have to feed the world? Why can't it just be a supplement to feeding the world? Like, and what will the farmers do if it starts feeding the world? So the intention of urban farming is not to feed the world. I mean, that was not the game plan. But
Just
it can definitely be a huge support to not only food security, but also food safety, and more importantly, malnutrition and what I call as nutritional density. The food grown usually through urban farming has a much higher nutritional density. For the same amount of calories, the amount of nutrition you get is much higher. So all these malnutrition related diseases that are part of our society can really go down. The diseases can go away. So there's a lot of benefits to it without just, it's not just about feeding the world, it's about also feeding it in the right way. So
Mhm.
and then also there's also, besides the food aspect of it, there's a consciousness aspect to it, awareness aspect of it, is to, if you start growing, you're more conscious about that wheat or that rice that's coming through a farmer, so now it's very unlikely that you will grow your own wheat and rice in the city. So
Mhm.
that's still coming from somewhere. But what happens is, when you start urban farming, suddenly the society is much more conscious. The people are much more conscious, not only about food. What I've also seen is a huge transformation, like really 360-degree transformation in people who are completely insensitive towards environment, towards planet, towards animals, towards ecology. They start growing just one pot, and suddenly I've seen people completely change their heart, over 4 or 5 years. There's a huge effect of, becoming more conscious about our own planet. And that can happen because now suddenly you're connecting with nature through growing your own food, even if it's just one pot. So my question is, why do we even have to think about it feeding the world?
Mhm.
That's
Yes,
not even
yes,
the intention for it.
yes, yes, absolutely. I think I'm assuming the intention of this question was, I think, little around like a natural farming or a non-chemical pesticide farming. Can that feed the world? Because there has been this narrative that you need a GMO, otherwise you can't have that much of crop. So I think I'm taking the liberty to assume that I think question was around uh, even if the farmer is doing organic farming and natural farming, can they feed the world?
I definitely think the answer to that is yes, very, very strong yes. These are all sorts of, see, the what we hear in the media, 99% of it is completely manipulated. So we have to be really smart about things. What's out there, we have to apply our own judgment, whether that's required or not. See, there are many aspects of it. So there are judgments about how much food a person needs, and there's a huge spectrum on it. That's number one. uh, the type of food that we need, if you're leaning more towards animal based products, then the amount of area required for a person is much higher. The third aspect of it is the nutritional density, which I was talking about earlier. If you're eating more nutrition dense food, then you don't need as many calories. So how much area do you need? And then when you factor all this in, then the amount of land mass that's available for growing food is much more than the amount of people still on the planet, and the ones that are going to be in the next 20, 30 years. The second thing is also about the productivity aspect of it. Because we have degraded the lands so much over the last 6, 7 decades, we say that these chemicals are required, but studies after studies show that over a long time these lands degrade and the yields go down unless you start putting in more and more chemicals. And so basically, this is an exploitative extractive system. It does not work like that. We haven't really explored the creativeness of human design and everything. The way we design things is something that we have never explored. uh, when we do rooftop gardens, or space constraint is a big factor, and we design things in a way where we are growing a lot more food in 100 square feet, just by just by the way of designing it. I could have designed it a bit differently, and it might appear to be that I'm using all of the space very efficiently, but it's still not very efficient. So just the way we think of designing, and designing is not just in terms of space, designing is in terms of time, in dimension, in multiple dimensions you can design things. So I think that the human creativity is so far ahead that I think this is just a media purported things to make people believe that we need these chemicals.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this brings me to the last question of the day, which is Hais has been asking, what is the so before we go there, I also wanted to check that to everyone who is asking to be in a WhatsApp group, there are two options I would like to invite here. One is people have more questions, Kapil, apparently. Of course, I'm sure, why not? So is it a WhatsApp group we can make where they can ask questions, or we are also putting a base camp tomorrow morning where we can make a page where you all can share resources, put your questions. So would that be more convenient so that we all can, rather than WhatsApp sometimes becomes just too intrusive, and also questions get lost there. So Basecamp is a place, I would say, where you all can put your questions and we can engage in conversations, and even Kapil can answer at his own time, if that is convenient.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
And I think the last question, so I think we are very inspired by what you're talking about, urban farming. And I think, yes, I honestly feel there are more questions to this 45-minute has been less to dive deeper. But I think last question is, which is coming, has come twice, is what is the difference between Edible Roots and Edible Roots Foundation? So supposedly there are two entities. So if you would like to cover, and if that, I think, yeah.
So Edible Roots Foundation, we registered about a year and a half ago. Uh, since I started Edible Roots, I always had one of the beliefs I carry is that a certain percentage of our profits should go towards towards, so to say, charitable causes, what is called as tithing. So that was always my belief, and so that was one reason. The second reason, and I won't say the one reason is more important than the other, but it just made sense because of all these reasons. The second reason was that there are things that we do, and the money that comes to us for doing those things does not belong to a for-profit organization. So
We lose him again. Yeah, hi, cliffhanger. Now he will come. Once he goes, then he can actually come. Otherwise, it's like stuck. And we have you back. Are you there?
कोई बार-बार कॉल कर रहा है, उससे अटक जा रहा है.
And you're back. Yeah. And he's stuck again. Okay. So if he's back in next 10 seconds, we'll thank him. It's terrible. Mm-hmm. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So I was saying that one reason was a charitable source for our profits, a percentage of our profits. The second was a certain amount of work that we do does not, the money for that does not belong to a private limited. For example, work doing for slums or for busties and areas like this, or for government schools. So a lot of these funds come to us from funding agencies that do not want to give money to a private organization. So even for that reason, for and then of course we want to do other, so some part of our team, some of the founding team members I had, they wanted to do more areas of work, like we do work around native ecological restoration, waste management, which did not directly align with the work that we are doing as the main organization. So there were many reasons for this, and that's why we have these two organizations, one that is more towards ecology, more towards the social aspects of things, and one that is doing the work of farming itself.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I think I would now like to thank Kapil. I hope at least if not all, some of the questions are answered. And we will continue in Basecamp and we can keep asking questions. And I am hopeful that some of us will end up becoming urban farmers and will have a careers doing that. So thank you, Kapil. If you want to say anything, you want to add any note at the end, you're welcome. And yes, and we call it.
No, I'm glad that we did this. I'm really glad that I see one of the things that when I started out Edible Roots, and when this was the journey was going, besides the act of growing food and making people aware of it, one of the personal sort of my driving forces was that how can I wanted to create an example of doing something that can be good for the planet and the people while you make money. So, and because a lot of young youth and people come to me who want to do good work, but then there are very few examples of organizations that are really doing good work for the planet and the people, but at the same time making money. Eventually it all becomes a model of greed. So how to create something that is not driven by greed, but at the same time is financially sustainable. I'm also very against borrowing money, or asking for grants and donations, or because I truly believe that if something is so good, then it should financially sustain itself. So 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 that's why that was my vision, and that is still my vision, that I that we create an example that makes people believe that this is doable, that there is a successful example, because the first few ventures I did were not successful in that sense.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Edible Roots inspires them, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think Kapil and Edible Roots is an example of doing good work and being able to make living. So I think that's our message as Alivelihoods also. So yes, thank you everyone. We will end this, and I would request that you take 2-3 minute pee break or whatever you need. But please join Hangout Space even after 5 minutes if you want, so that, because that's a space where we actually maybe and you end up finding your co-founder or your team on whatever in this universe is possible. So yes, thank you everyone. I'll see you in the Hangout space. It's in the main room again, and the link is on the OST board. So yeah, see you again in another deep dive tomorrow. And thank you everyone.